And it looks like we are live once again with another episode of the Manny Wolfe Show. Today, my guest is Nathan HIRSCH, who recently sold FreeUp and is now working on Outsource Cool. I'm going to let you tell the rest of it, man. But first of all, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing good. How are you holding up with all the craziness?
In my little kind of corner of the world, things are okay, actually. It's almost like I feel like, sorry, things are cool over here. But yeah, everybody feels the larger, kind of issues that are going on for sure. But in terms of direct impact, we've been fortunate.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. But
yeah,
today should be fun. I'm excited to talk about VAs and scaling businesses.
Well, so let's talk about VAs and scaling businesses then.
Yeah, I mean, I've scaled two businesses now. I scaled an Amazon business to sell over $25 million over a 6-7 year period, really completely by virtual assistants. And then FreeUp, we took from a $5,000 initial investment and not only scaled it with VAs, but organically scaled it with VAs. We spent very little money on ads and we created systems and processes to help us do it, a lot of which we now teach at Outsource Cool. And we scaled it from a $5,000 investment to $1 million, $5 million, $9 million. 12 million last year. We were acquired by one of our clients at the end of last year, and they essentially reached out to us and said, "Hey, we want to get into the space. We don't want to build it from scratch. We really like FreeUp. Would you be interested in being acquired?" And from there, they ended up making us an offer that we felt like was more than fair, if not aggressive. And then the due diligence began. I mean, they had 1 million questions for us. Yeah. They wanted to know how customer service worked, how billing worked. And that's where having not only really great VAs, but having really good SOPs was in our favor. Because when they said, "Hey, how does billing work?" 5 minutes later, we said, "Hey, here's a 40-page SOP that shows how everything works in every situation, who does what when." And yeah, I'll let you jump in.
Okay, sure. Great. I know you had a partner in FreeUp. Which one of you guys liked to handle stuff like the SOPs, the nitty gritty stuff? Because here's what I'm thinking, Nathan. The same things that you use to build and scale FreeUp and apparently an Amazon business as well that I wasn't aware of, could be adapted for, coaches and experts. How it's going to look a little different, however, right? And usually coaches and experts do not like stuff like creating SOP. You know what I mean?
Right.
So which one of you guys was the one that sort of took on the role of handling that stuff?
So Connor and I have very different skill sets. He's a much better writer. He's more technical than me. I'm a little bit more of the face. So, but I'm much better on like the customer service side. So for customer service, I was in charge of the SOPs. For the back end side, like our blog, our partnership program, that was a lot more him. And probably overall, he ends up writing slightly more SOPs than me, only because I spend a little bit more time on the phone and doing podcasts and stuff like that. But we both know how to write SOPs. And I completely agree with you. I mean, the stuff that we use to scale FreeUp is the same kind of stuff that you can apply to any business. And that's really what we're doing at Outsource Cool. We're really teaching you three things. Yeah. First, the fundamentals of interviewing, onboarding, training, and managing. You get our exact interview process, onboarding process, how we run meetings, how we fire VAs. All that stuff is important. And once you know that, then it becomes fun because then we give you our operation stuff like bookkeeping and customer service and a VA that does scheduling for you. Like those are playbooks that you can implement in any business. And on the flip side, organic marketing is how we grew FreeUp. So getting on podcasts and having a VA do research, having a partnership program, having your VA run that, doing social media and content, having your VA run that. And you can also take our SOPs and stuff like that and apply them to your other systems and processes. So that's really what we teach at Outsource Cool is our blueprint for growing businesses with VAs. And then you can take that and apply it to your business.
Okay. So what's the primary difference between FreeUp and VAs or Outsource Cool?
Well, Outsource Cool doesn't provide VAs or freelancers.
Got it.
Free Up's a marketplace for pre-vetted VAs and freelancers. And we have a great relationship with the new owners. I'm a client of Free Up. That's how much I believe in it. And I still refer people there, but people can take Outsource School and apply those systems to go hire on Upwork or wherever. That's fine too. But they refer people to us and vice versa.
Okay, cool. So I'm curious, let's assume that this audience is going to be primarily, online entrepreneur / coach / thought leader types. And what's the first thing that you see that most of us in that wagon need and are missing?
It's all about relocating your time, right? And the average entrepreneur gets overwhelmed because they're like, oh, I need to hire all these full-time people. And for me, it's how do I get 5 hours of my week back and relocate that to growing my business? Or if you're right now working 80 hours a week, how do you get 5 hours a week back to go spend time with your kids or your family or whatever it is? So even now, when I started Outsource School and we had a basic idea and we didn't know if people are going to like it or hate it, right? Just because we sold the company doesn't mean that every new idea I come up with is going to take off. We didn't start off with full-time VAs. We hired a part-time bookkeeper for 5 hours a month, not even 5 hours a week, and an EA to work underneath me to get me out of my inbox and schedule my podcasts and meetings for 10 hours a week. And that's how we started. And we built up from there. And that's what entrepreneurs should be focused on.
I think getting an EA, I would say that is for 95% of us, that has got to be your first move. What do you think? When do you? This is such a BS question because there's no answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. When do you think we should be looking to hire an EA?
Yeah, and I agree with what you said. It's funny. With Free Up, my first hire was an EA and my second hire was a bookkeeper. And with Outsource School, my first hire was a bookkeeper and my second hire was an EA. So to me, those are the two that you need to do. You need to get out of bookkeeping, but you need to have monthly reports and understand your numbers. And you can't be doing all your scheduling or your inbox or stuff like that. That just gets crazy. For me, it's once you've proven a little bit of the concept or you at least have a product, have a service. I mean, with Outsource School, to be honest, we hired this bookkeeper before we had any revenue. We were mid creating a course, but we knew from past experience that we don't want to start selling and then be like, oh my God, we need a bookkeeper. And then we need to go back and update things. We hired the bookkeeper a little early. It only cost us $25 a month, $5 an hour, 5 hours a month. And we got that set up early. And then once we got our first sale, we got our first member, then we hired that EA shortly after that. So a little bit of proving the concept, but we hire on the early side.
So I think that's really cool because I think that somebody might be tempted to say, oh yeah, it's easy for you to hire a bookkeeper. You just sold a company. And you're like, yeah, it's $25 a month. Surely if you're a serious coach, you can budget $25 a month. Now let's talk about the EA though, because frankly, it's just a little closer to my heart because the huge change that happened in what my days felt like. And by the way, for everybody listening, this is back when my first EA and my second EA were not even that good, but the change was so profound. It took me, at least to some extent, out of that just crazy hamster wheel feeling, right? And now a few iterations later, I've got an amazing, like just a she needs a cape and like X-ray vision. She's a superhero without a doubt. And the difference is, even if I'm taking a nap at 2 p.m, work is getting done, But so talk to me about the EA hiring process. You hire early. I would suggest hiring early too. In fact, I give people that advice, my clients that advice, hire before you think you need to. Like I say, as soon as you start feeling like, wow, this is feeling like my coaching business is whipping me around by the tail a little bit. As soon as you start feeling that.
Yeah. And so I'm creating a playbook right now that our members get access to and people can buy separately called the EA Scheduling Playbook. And it essentially teaches you how to set up a VA to do one thing, and that's schedule your meetings. And you might have and organize your calendar. You might have different types of meetings. Like I have internal meetings, I have external meetings. So External is client networking calls. Internal is my team or my business partner. Then I have podcasts and Facebook Lives and stuff like that. And you have to set up rules. You have to set up guidelines. Like for me, I don't want to do more than one podcast a day. I learned that the hard way. Doing more than that, it's crazy. So that's a rule. And I like doing podcasts between this time. I like doing phone calls in the afternoon. During the morning, I want it booked. So we have a cheat sheet that you can fill out to give your VA very specific instructions. And then once you get that in place and you set up a Calendly, which is pretty easy, we show you how to do that. Then everything becomes like one of three things. Either you're giving someone your Calendly link, which is easy. You don't really have to do anything. Your VA might color code it in your calendar after the fact or double check it, but not much work on your end. Second, they give you a booking link, in which case your VEA goes in, checks your calendar, schedules it, makes sure it follows your rules and all of that. Or third, you come across people that refuse to use booking links, but you still want to have a meeting with them. And your EA needs to be able to have a conversation with them instead of going back and forth, proposing 3 times. And once they agree to one, creating the invite and sending it out. And we teach you how to set all that up. And then once that's set up, you don't have to do any of these bookings anymore. That's hours you get back every single month. And then you're going to build trust with the VA and you can give them additional tasks like emails and stuff like that on top of it.
Now, would you call those roles that you just described there, those jobs, I should say, EA or VA? Because to me, in my mind, the EA needs to be able to do a lot of things where the VA can be like within parameters. This is my job description. Now, and I could be wrong here, man. You are far more the expert on this than I am. But my impression is that you don't ask a lot of lateral thinking of a VA, where an EA definitely needs to sort of be able to predict your thought process. Am I tracking that right?
No, you're right. And this is how I define it isn't necessarily the correct way. There's no right or wrong here. And Connor, my business partner, and I, we always have a saying that titles don't really matter. It has to do with what the description is, what they're actually doing. That's what really matters. But the way that I like to say it is there's 3 levels of people you can hire: followers, doers, and experts. So to me, the followers, $5 to $10 an hour, non-US, they're there to follow your system, your process. That's what I consider a virtual assistant. Some people think everyone that works from home is a VA. That's fine. But when I say the word VA, I'm just talking about the followers. The doers are more specialists like graphic designers, writers. Experts are bringing their own strategy, their own system to the table. So then when you go from VA to EA, EA is just like a sub role of that. The EA is working directly with the CEO or a high level person in the company. Whereas I might hire a VA that's a customer service rep or a VA that's a bookkeeper. Their followers are following my directions, but hiring a VA that's also an EA, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Basically, it's just it's a level of judiciousness on your part as the person hiring, and it's a level of sort of being able to somehow test for that ability to do those. The thing that I think, the distinction that I think for an EA is that it's going to be a little bit more like, there's a little more unknown. There's a little more need to adapt. That's the only real difference. Yeah.
Absolutely. And like I have an EA right now, Anna, who does my scheduling, but she does a lot more than that. And she can run our Facebook group. She can do stuff that does require thinking, that doesn't always have direction. But at the end of the day, she's still a follower. She's still working with me because I have most of my systems, most of my processes in place, but she's also helping me build these processes and improve on them over time.
Cool. Yeah. So hire the EA or VA, whatever you want to call it, early before it really gets like, shit, I need to make this happen. Right. Okay. Talk to me a little bit about what the process looks like for the VA whose job it was to get you on podcasts.
Yeah, so we have a course called the podcast outreach formula, and for that, I mean that all our members, if you're a member, you get access to everything. It's $1,000 a year, or you can buy our courses individually. But essentially, I wake up every day to a list of podcasts from my virtual assistant that are relevant, and we've come up with rules. Again, I'm a big fan of setting up guidelines of, hey, I only want to be on podcasts that have over 100 episodes. I want to be on a podcast that are in X category that whatever that have guests, for example. Like I don't want to get a list of podcasts that don't even accept guests. So you set up certain criteria and we give you that in the course. And then there's multiple ways to go about actually doing that research using iTunes or using other influencers to find out the podcasts that they've been on. And that's what we walk you through. And I'm a big proponent of going on podcasts. I mean, it's one of the best ways to organically market. I tell people, we have 150 Outsource Cool members, and I tell them all the time, if you're not going on at least a podcast a week, you're missing out. I go on a podcast a day, and it's good for networking. I mean, you and I have built a relationship over the years. It's good for backlinks and SEO, which a lot of people don't think about, but that's how you get your website all over Google, is by being on a lot of podcasts. It's good for a snowballing effect where you can use podcasts to get you on more and more podcasts. I was just on Roland Fraser's podcast, which is a pretty big one.
That's a big one. Yeah.
You can guess that I probably wouldn't have gotten on Roland Fraser's podcast if I hadn't been on podcasts before that had snowballed for me to get there. And lastly, it's just good to get in front of thousands of people at once. You can do one-on-one phone calls all day, but you get to speak a message, build brand authority and stuff like that. And you should, all this should be running in the background for all the organic playbooks that we teach. The VA is doing 90% of the work. You're showing up and doing the 10%. You're going on the podcast and doing that. And the VA is even emailing them afterwards, but the before and the after is done without you.
I love that, man. I love especially the idea of what needs to be happening in the background. I think this is something we really miss at a certain level. And those of us who are trying to land business through social media, who have, like, there's just a certain demographic of people who don't get this, right? And my heart goes out to them. That's why I want to talk to people like you who have sort of like, it's sort of like you've figured out the code behind the matrix, you know? It's like, whereas a lot of us are just stuck in the illusion that we've got to get on the bike and just pedal all day. And sooner or later, a client comes out of the chute, right? And we're just like, this is the thing that I'm really wanting to bring out to the world, this message that, look, if you don't have the stuff happening in the background while you're not there, we've all heard this said before, you don't really have a business yet. What you've got is a hustle, and that might be okay for you, but it's not a business yet. So does it look something like with your podcast booking VA, you set parameters, I assume you have an overarching training that everybody, or some sort of a process everybody has to filter through in order to get in the first place. And then they're just spending, I'm going to guess, a couple hours a day on iTunes looking at things that'd be a fit and then outreaching for you.
Yeah. And that's the best thing. It's not a 40-hour-a-week job. I mean, it can be, but I go on a podcast a day. I'm booked out until August, and I don't even hire that VA full-time. So it's probably not a full-time job. You can do it an hour or two every single day, and you're waking up every morning to these podcasts. And there's different ways to go about it. And me personally, I like to actually be the one to send the email to the podcast host. It takes me 2 seconds. I think it's a little bit better, but we also teach you how to have your VA do it in an authentic way if you prefer that. And your VA, again, can come in and actually schedule that podcast. So what happens is VA does research. I wake up to a list. I quickly email the podcast that I want to be on from that list. And in the list, it has data too, so I can take a quick peek. And then once I start getting responses, which not everyone's going to respond, but we get a good amount of responses. They have a booking link, and my VA schedules it, and I just show up and I wake up every morning. Hey, what podcast do I have today? So again, I'm just doing that last 10%.
Nice. I think this is a big one for people. Now, what about this, Nathan? Once you're on a podcast, do you have a preset strategy for sort of getting the most out of that podcast?
Yeah, and while that's not the main part of the course, because everything in Outsource Cool is focused around VAs, anything that we teach, we go over our best tactics for. So I talk about the before, the during, the after the podcast, what you should expect, what you should prepare, best practices. Most of my best practices are mistakes that I've made early on. In this case, I was going on podcasts, but I mean, very similarly, like we have what we call the partnership playbook. In a big way that we grew FreeUp was having partners with all these different people in the e-commerce and the marketing space. They'd promote us, we'd promote them. All of this was organized with the VA, and we teach you how to set up that process and have a VA run it. But we also teach you our strategies for forming the partnerships and having those getting the most out of those partnerships. So everything we teach has the VA process, plus that additional information that will help you grow and scale.
Nice. So then if you're willing to share, what is one of your sort of your high leverage concepts so that you get the most out of the hour you spend?
Yeah, spending time to actually talk to the host. I mean, I've seen people that show up for, and I was guilty of this early on too. You show up on the podcast, you record, you leave, and that's it. And you're like, all right, I just had a great podcast. And you're missing out on the networking and referrals and potential partnerships there. I mean, not every podcast you go on makes sense to turn them into a partner or have an ongoing relationship with, but you never know that unless you spend the time to get to know the host and talk to them and see how you can help them and find ways that are mutually beneficial. So that's a tip that I like to give out. And a lot of members in our community started doing that. And all of a sudden, some of their best partners, best referral partners started popping up.
Yeah, I agree. I think that one of the things to bear in mind on the subject of podcasts is once you start getting interviewed on shows that have a decent following, these people take what they do very seriously, And so if you can sort of, I don't want to say get on the good side, but if it becomes clear that you're a high value person as well, those are very potentially, very good relationships to be looking at.
Yeah, and you want to have stories ready to go. There's certain questions you get asked on most podcasts that you should probably have some kind of answer for. You want to be ready at the end when they say, hey, where can people find out more about you, and make sure you're directing them to the right place. There's lots of little things. And I'll say, like, nothing we teach at Outsource School is rocket science, but it's all stuff that I wish someone had just taught me back in the day and said, hey, don't do this, do this. This is how you set stuff up with VAs. This is how you go on podcasts. This is how you form partnerships. Make sure you don't mess up a partnership by doing this. I mean, that's really what gets you a head start as an entrepreneur, is these cheat sheets and playbooks and systems that you can do trial and error for years and eventually figure it out. But it's a lot faster and more efficient to learn it from someone who's been there.
Well, I think that that's a really important idea. I remember listening to, at the time, my favorite podcast was The Art of Charm. And Jordan from The Art of Charm was talking to, I don't know who, but what this person had done was taken a huge body of information that was valuable and synthesized it and summarized it. And then there were a small but vocal minority who were like, you didn't do anything. You didn't teach anything here, and Jordan was like, so you compressed people's learning curve from a matter of years to a matter of weeks. And some people are complaining that you didn't have any original thought. I think that misses the point entirely. And I think what you're saying about how none of it may be rocket science, but how many times in our entrepreneurial journey do we have those moments where we finally cross a threshold of understanding? And from that perspective, we look back and go, oh, of course, it's so obvious, but it's not obvious going through it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And an example of that, I mean, Tim Ferriss, and now Tools to Titans, his last book that I read, it's all information that other people are teaching. And he just, like you said, put it together, made it easy to read and all of that. And I will say with Outsource School, a lot of these are our processes that we built over time and all of that. But I completely agree. I mean, the ability to take something and go step by step by step and then have it in place, ready to go for your business going forward. Like, once you have a system for podcast research in place, I've been using that system for 4 years now and been using it to grow FreeUp, and now we're using it to grow Outsource School. And same thing with partnerships, same thing with our bookkeeping formula. Like, once you know how to hire bookkeepers and set up the right monthly reports and have all that going, then you can repeat it business after business.
All right. So a little bit of a tacky question. What does the podcast program, the podcast system cost now?
So it's $250 for just the podcast outreach formula. And to be become a member, if you buy our main course, Cracking the VA Code, which is $9.97, you get access to every single playbook, every single course that we come out with for the next year. You get access to our private Facebook group. You get our support for a year. We give you $50 of free up credit. We're partnered with them. So our Cracking the VA Code course, that's when we give you our exact systems for interviewing, onboarding, training, and managing. Those are the fundamentals. But if you feel like you don't need that and you just want the podcast outreach formula, you can, of course, buy that separately.
At $250.
Right.
I say that only because I guess I say that specifically to a lot of the people in my world who I want them to do this. You know what I mean? I would say to a lot of my audience, you guys could benefit from everything Nathan's doing. That's exactly why I wanted Nathan on the show, speaking about you and not to you for a moment. But just the podcast interview piece alone has literally changed people's perception of me in the marketplace. Just that alone. And so I want people to know, for some reason, maybe you don't have $9.97 right now. That's okay. That's all right. I get it. But if you got $250, this is a thing that is worth doing. I'm not the only Manny Wolfe in the world, which was heartbreaking to me, of course, to figure out. But I have absolutely dominated the first page for my name for years. And it's because I've done hundreds of podcast episodes. More than anything else, those drive the SEO for me.
Absolutely.
So I really want to like vocally back what you did there and let people know how important and how powerful it is.
I appreciate it. The only thing I'll add is because of the whole COVID situation, and we understand people's life is crazy right now. We have set it up that if you want to become a member and you can't afford the $9.97, you can do $333 a month for 3 months, no interest. And we're going to keep that open for as long as Corona's going on. And, yeah.
That's huge, man. That's huge. I'm so glad we stumbled across that because I wouldn't have thought to ask that. Let's see. Is there anything we can do specifically? We'll talk about this after the show. I want to see if there's any way we can have it known that my audience went to you from this. I'm not looking for a kickback or anything like that. I want to support. That's incredibly generous, man. That's an incredibly cool thing to do. And so I want to see if I can support you with that.
Let's do this. I'll create a 10% off coupon. It'll be under Manny. So if you use the coupon code Manny, you'll get 10% off, and I'll leave that open for the next week.
Nice, man. That's awesome. Right on. What is like what's your growth schedule? What are you planning on the rest of 2020 looking like for Outsource School?
We want to get to 1,000 members. That's our goal. Right now we're at about 150. Keep in mind, we just launched this about 2 months ago. We spent the first few months creating our first course. And the other thing we didn't even talk about is we're building the same developer that built the Free Up Marketplace, who was part of the buyout. He's working on this SOP building software that we think is going to be a game changer for VAs. I mean, the reason we've done all our SOPs on Google Docs for the past X amount of years is because videos is a pain. When you record an SOP video, it gets outdated very, very quickly. And I don't want to have to redo videos. I don't want to have to hire video editors. So we've created a tool. Imagine a loom that as you're going through recording a step-by-step process, you can right-click every time you get to the next step. When it's done, it organizes all the steps. You have dynamic videos. You can add text. And then if you need to swap out video 3, you can easily do that in the software without having to record the whole thing or hire a video editor. And it also is a vault where you can give VAs access, remove access, edit access, all of that. So we're working on that, and our members will get access to that as well.
Guys, I want you to think of it this way. I want you to think of it as though somebody has been for several years now spending all of their time and focus in that part of entrepreneurship that you avoid because you don't like it, because you don't understand it, because it doesn't match your big vision, kind of visionary helper personality. And that person is Nathan. The more I'm talking to you, man, the more I'm like, you're just geeking out on this stuff, aren't you?
This is what I love doing. I mean, I love
Yeah.
solving problems. I mean, my Amazon business didn't really solve a problem. I kind of stumbled into that, but I hated using the other platforms. So I built my own platform with FreeUp. I hated developing my own processes, which I eventually had to do. And so I created Outsource Cool to bring those processes back. I hated creating SOPs on Google Docs, and I wanted to use video, but I already mentioned why I hated doing it. So now I'm building a software to solve it. And that's really how that's why I like being an entrepreneur. That's part of the fun of it.
Well, I think that the rest of our people, the rest of our tribe really benefits from someone like you, because you don't have the prototypical entrepreneur personality.
How so?
Well, see, it's important because again, so the word entrepreneur has changed, right? It used to be unofficially that you were an entrepreneur if you built something like some industry or service from scratch, and then traditionally you would leave it and go build something else. That was the difference between somebody who started a business and an entrepreneur. And that has changed to people who are in the coaching space, basically, who call themselves entrepreneurs. And so those are the people I'm referring to when I say that most of us, we painting with a broad brush, we have this sort of, we're more driven by this heart to serve, and we don't spend our time in the nitty gritty. You've obviously got a heart to serve, and I don't say this to flatter you. I've known you for a couple of years now, and it's clear by the way you show up. But the thing that is sort of really cool is you have the willingness, or maybe even the fascination, to stay in the nitty gritty and handle all these little fastidious things, right? That many of us, we don't even know that these things are the things that are effing us up.
Right.
Until we finally figure it out. And then we have that moment where we look back and go, God, if I had known that, I could have saved a year. You know what I mean? And you're building those for us.
I mean, it's kind of funny with every business, you kind of learn something and then you take what you've learned and apply it to the next one. So with the Amazon business, I had no idea how to hire. It took me years to figure it out. Once I had a good hiring process, when I started FreeUp, I could hit the ground running. I could start hiring good people right away. I took that process over, but I had no idea how to market at all, because with Amazon, I paid them my 15%. They got me the customers, and that was that. And so I had to learn podcasts and partnerships and content and SEO and all of that. And again, took me years to figure it out until I had a really good blueprint. And now with Outsource Cool, I can hit the ground running with hiring. I can hit the ground running with organic marketing because I already know how to do it, but I don't know anything about building membership. So I'm learning out that right now. And so you kind of take what you've learned and apply it quickly. And I have a unique opportunity with Outsource Cool to teach people stuff faster and to give them already built systems that they can plug into their business.
Yeah. And I like what you said about applying it fast, because I will plug for you now. You started talking about Outsource Cool before your acquisition was finalized.
No, that's not true.
Is it not true?
We didn't even have the idea of Outsource Cool until like a month.
It must have been the way it was showing up in my social media feed, because that's what it looked like. It looked like you guys were like talking about the Hoth coming in, taking over, right? And then it seemed like, man, now he's on to Outsource Cool already.
It was. I mean, when we sold it, I mean, the first conversation Connor and I had is, hey, are we sick of each other? Do we still want to work with each other? And fortunately, we did. And then from there is, what do we want to do next? Do we want to stay in the space, get out of the space, go into real estate, take a year off? And we booked a lot of travel plans that now are all canceled because of COVID. But with that, we decided to stay in the space, and people started reaching out to us asking if we could teach them the systems and processes. And that's kind of where the idea of Outsource Cool came about. So it was about a month or two after the sale.
All right. Well, it was still quick implementation. If it wasn't truly overlapping, it was still pretty quick. Let's do this, man. Is there anything that I didn't think to ask that you need to really get out there that you want to share with people? Anything I didn't touch on?
No, I mean, I love just networking with other entrepreneurs. It's something I do every single day. It's the first thing I do every morning is I reach out to 3 new entrepreneurs. I'm not trying to sell them. I'm not trying to pitch them. I want to learn about them, learn what they're up to, tell them what I'm up to. If there's some way to help each other or work together, I'm all about it. And if not, it's just great meeting other people in the space. And over that day, it doesn't really push the needle at all. But at the end of the year, you look back and you're like, man, my network is huge. I know a lot of people in the space. So that's something that I'm a big fan of doing. And anyone listening that wants to network, whether I can help you with VAs or help you with something that has nothing to do with VAs, or you just want to talk to me, feel free to connect with me, Nathan Hirsch on Facebook or LinkedIn, Real Nate Hirsch on Instagram or Twitter.
And I will say that that's how we got connected. You just reached out to me and had no pitch and no agenda and just said, "Hey, how's it going?"
Right.
So yeah, it works. All right, my friend, where do we go to find out more about you, man? I mean, you sort of just gave it away, but give us one place that you'd like people to go to learn, to connect with you, whatever.
Yeah, so we have this really cool VA calculator. It's completely free on our site. You can go to Outsource Cool and grab it at the top, or go to outsourcecool.com/VA calculator. It allows you to put information about your business, and it tells you how many virtual assistants you can afford right now. And it's an awesome tool. And obviously, we have tons of information on Outsource Cool on the site. And if you need me at all, you know how to reach me.
Awesome, man. So, guys, you can use the code Manny to sign up for Outsource School for 10% off for the next week. And you can go to Outsource School and get the free VA calculator. And I will vouch that if you reach out to Nate to say hi, he's going to reach out to you too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Unless you just got like a psycho profile or something, and even then he might, I don't know. I want to thank you for your time today, man. It was concise and it was super, super value packed.
Awesome. Hopefully he's able to help some people, and we'll talk soon.
Okay, buddy.